Welcome to Click for IB Biology. We're studying topic D3.3, which is homeostasis, the internal regulation of conditions. And in this particular video, we're going to be looking at thermoregulation. There's a PDF of this presentation that's linked in down below in the description, where you'll also find a 10-question quiz with answers that you can use to check your understanding of the content of thermoregulation. Now, as with the model that we've been using, there's a temperature around which we regulate, which I'm going to state as 37 degrees. This, in fact, can be quite variable in humans depending upon the actual activity that the human's involved in, the time of day, sleep conditions, and so forth, disease conditions. But let's take 37 as our working fixed point. And of course, if our body temperature rises too high, then we need to have a receptor, which is the hypothalamus, and it must be bringing about a response through its effectors, which we'll all know as sweating, vasodilation, and the hair lying flat on our body surface. But of course, we can also get cold, again detected by the hypothalamus, various inputs to the hypothalamus that we'll look at, and its effectors in this condition will raise our body temperature through shivering, vasoconstriction, the hairs rising and trapping air. Now, of course, just like the other internal regulations, thermoregulation has its physiological limits. Exceeding the upper physiological limit leads to a condition called hyperthermia, generally regarded as beginning around 38 degrees, in which the body begins to malfunction in its actual control system, in addition to the other damage which is going on. At the lower level, we've got 35 degrees, the beginning of hypothermia. Again, it's dependent upon whether that hypothermia is due to exposure to the environment or due to immersion in water or something like that. And so it's a very specialist study, but we have a lower limit of physiological stress. And beyond these levels, damage starts to occur. And if we think and try to connect out to other parts of our course, such as the effect on the rate of reaction of enzymes, we'll know that low temperatures and increasing those will reach a maximum, which is known as the maximum rate of reaction, which is here at the top of the curve, badly drawn, of course. And then down here, this corresponds on this curve here to a temperature. That would be the optimal. And what I'm saying here is that these physiological limits will be fairly close to this optimal point so that we maintain our functionality within the optimal zone, maximum rates of reaction to achieve. But let's look at the receptors and the effectors to this particular model. And then when we look at the body, we should be aware that we could regard it as being in two general sections. We have the brain, the heart, the lungs, and all the major organs are retained within, deep in the body. This we would think of as our core, and very vital to protect that from severe temperature changes. Our peripheral structures, our legs, our hands, our arms, and so forth, our feet, those have within them receptors which can detect changes in the body temperatures which are likely to occur there first before the core, and those can be used as an early warning system to the core so that we can respond and protect our core temperatures. The sensory input to the hypothalamus in the brain by the peripheral receptors is a nervous input. The core will tend to create its own input to the hypothalamus through blood flow. So as blood flows around the body, the temperature of blood is input to the hypothalamus. It's sensitive to blood temperature if that is high or that begins to fall. And within the hypothalamus, we have two response centers. This one here in orange, we could call that the heat sensitive center. This is the one which will respond to high blood temperatures or input of high temperatures from the sensory input. So it recognizes that you are hot, and the response, which will then be created usually through the autonomic nervous system, is that of sweating and vasodilation. And also our hair is likely to lie flat on our skin where we have its presence. Now these factors together will bring about a reduction in the blood temperature, which of course will then negatively feed back to the hypothalamus, reducing the output along our heat-sensitive system. But of course, our body could be getting cold. The blood might be going down towards the 35 hypothermia. Our peripheral receptors may be detecting that we're in very cold conditions. And so these are known, of course, correspondingly as the cold sensitive centers of the hypothalamus. And the nerve the nerve output from the cold centers will bring about shivering. So that's muscle contraction generating heat from respiration, vasoconstriction in the peripheral system, preventing any further heat loss, and the hair will rise on our skin, trapping a boundary layer of heat, which will reduce the gradient for heat loss. And of course, both of these corrections, remember in the previous diagram, these are corrections. Both of these corrections will then input further to the hypothalamus with an adjustment in the heat or cold sensitive centers in order to regulate our body temperature. Sometimes we move into new environments. We might change location, globally speaking, or it may be that we actually go through seasonal changes. And for long-term responses, the hypothalamus, in response to prolonged sensory and blood flow input, will actually generate an output from the thyroid. The thyroid is kind of roughly upper thorax in the neck area, and the thyroid will output a hormone called T4 or thyroxine, and thyroxine will raise the metabolic rate, in both the heart, muscles, and in the liver, but also in brown adipose tissues. So BAT stands for brown adipose tissue, and the breakdown of the tissues, this brown adipose tissue, the fat which is in there, beta oxidation actually links into respiration and the generation of heat, which can be a response to, particularly a response to the cold, or indeed you could reduce that rate. So this would give us a long-term adaptation to thermoregulation as opposed to the previous heat and cold sensitive response, which are more short-term responses. Okay, so now we're moving on from thermoregulation. We're going to take a look at osmoregulation and excretion, which are functions of the kidneys. There's the link to the first video in the center, a chance to subscribe to the channel in the middle there, and the playlist for your convenience.